Cool. So welcome back to King's.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
Yeah, I've had several people tell me that I should say hello for them. So first of all, you have what sounds like an incredibly cool job.
Thank
you. Do you want to sort of paint the picture first?
So I've worked in the Netherlands at the European Space Agency for a contractor for about 3.5 years, and I've actually just left, so doing something else now. But for the last 3.5 years, I'm working on future human spaceflight projects. So I used to work on space station operations, and now we're looking at future projects. So these are future experiments that can be launched to the ISS that astronauts can then use, but mainly the European Robotic Arm, which is a new robotic arm that we're launching to the space station next year. And it's going to help astronauts carry out spacewalks and also install new parts of the space station. So for that, what I've been doing mainly is training the cosmonauts and working with our Russian colleagues, which is really interesting. So I think a big part of my job is also international collaboration. It's something you don't really talk about when you're studying physics at school. You actually communicate people every day, and that's probably 80% of the work that I do, both in operations, so talking to the crew on the space station, but also every day to get the work done and to work with international colleagues. So it's really learning about that intercultural understanding. So working with the Russian colleagues with a translator, so that's something you get used to as well. So I've been doing that for the last 3.5 years. And we're actually going to, the team will be operating the arm from Russia, so they'll be going to the ISS Control Center in Moscow, and also controlling the arm from there, and also sort of helping the astronauts.
I mean, yeah, sounds incredibly cool. I mean, it's the sort of thing where even if you're in physics and you think what you do is pretty cool, that sort of fades a little bit in comparison. Is it something that you think, is this field something you've always wanted to go into?
It has. I've loved space since I was young, and I think I knew I wanted to go into space when I was in the library, and I found every book that I could. And one of the books I was flicking through as a 5 or 6 year old was the stories about NASA astronauts and space shuttle missions. I saw an image of a woman with brown hair and spacesuit, and there was a British flag on her arm, and the caption next to it said that this is Helen Sherman, and she's the first British astronaut. And I think for me, even at that young age, I knew what I wanted to be, and I wanted to be an astronaut when I was older. And in that moment, I think Helen Sherman, she became a role model to me, and she showed me that my dreams were possible. So what I did is I kind of kept that in my mind. I knew I wanted to do space. And so when I went to secondary school, I printed out the NASA astronaut guidelines, and I stuck those to the inside cover of my secondary school folder. And they said you needed to have a degree in physics, biology, maths, or engineering. So I did maths and physics at King's, and because I wanted to be an astronaut. But I think it was really along that process that I then learned that I really what I wanted to do apart from being an astronaut was also work in operations and work in mission control. So I told my physics teacher in year 7 that I wanted to work in mission control at NASA, and he didn't laugh at me. He actually really supported and encouraged me, and that's a big reason why I'm here today. And even through to when I was in year 13 doing my A-levels, the rest of the class did nuclear physics as an option, and I really wanted to do astrophysics, and he let me do that. So I studied over the summer and did the astrophysics module, and then study astrophysics at King. So it was only those small decisions and that encouragement through allies along the way that got me to do the engineering degree and then to get a job in engineering.
I mean, in hindsight, it must seem incredibly planned out, like a perfect plan from the beginning to the end. It was not like that.
It wasn't like, I think, I think when you get to this point, I'm very lucky to have got here, but also I think I've had incredible support and encouragement, I think, from my parents and teachers. That my parents that took me to the National Space Centre in Leicester, which you should go to if you've gone to before, to the Science Museum in London on the weekends, and also to my physics teachers and my biology teachers that just showed me about the possibilities of what I could do with a degree in science. And I think that's something you don't really taught to you at school, even sometimes your degree. It's really the impact that you can make on the world through a degree in science and engineering. I think it's one of the best degrees to do in that phase.
It's interesting. You're talking much about how you've gotten all of the support, not just from teachers, but also from your parents. Mm-hmm. And it seems as though you've really been, if not helped, then at least encouraged, which is a really nice, I think, a different perspective on these types of careers, because we often hear about people being more discouraged than encouraged. Is that also the picture you have, that you feel like you were net encouraged as opposed to discouraged, and you had to fight to get where you've gone?
I think one of the biggest challenges to study physics and actually to do a degree in physics is really talking to my parents and showing them what a degree in physics would entail. I think I'm from a British Asian background, and so it was really making sure that my parents knew that I could be successful with a degree in physics. So they're very supportive about me doing physics and working in the space industry, and that's what I wanted to do. But it was really, there was pressure obviously to do a more safe career or have a safer choice, so be a pharmacist or be a doctor or be a dentist or a teacher. So it's really showing them and kind of proving to them through them talking to my physics teacher and them talking to my biology teacher and showing them, helping them to know that I could actually be a successful woman today with a career in engineering and physics. I think that was a really big part of it as well.
When you say safe, do you mean as in physically safe, or do you mean as in easier to get a job?
Well, I think just from a British Asian and a cultural perspective, I think there is a push to go into a safe career. So it's something that your cousins do and something that people around you do. So it's really showing them that you could do something different that they may not have heard of. So I think that's really a big part of why I started Rocket Women as well, is to make sure that those role models were out there and they were tangible and visible to inspire the next generation, to show them what they could be, but also to make sure that their parents and their teachers and the people that were really encouraging them and helping them along the way also knew that these were successful careers to go into, and that information was out there to help them along the way.
Have you personally felt an urgency about getting the not just getting the message out that there are women in space science, but also like personally setting up things like Rocket Women? Like, what's been your main motivation?
I started Rocket Women in 2012. So I was working at the German Aerospace Center on operations for the space station. And as I went through, I did my physics degree and then and working in the space industry, there were less and less women that I saw around me. And so I really wanted to make sure that we reverse this trend. And especially if you look at the numbers, as we had before, only 20% of all physics undergraduates are female. And in engineering, it's even lower. And then engineering today in the UK, only 12% of all engineers are female. So I think you really need to make sure that we have 100% of the talent out there to make sure that we solve the really hard problems that we have in the world today. So I think we need to make sure that young people, when they're choosing their degree choices, and girls decide to leave science when they're at the age of 11 or 12, so that's quite young. So if you decide to choose different GCSEs or different A levels, that can really make a big impact on the degree that you do in the end as well.
Do you think it's crucial that people choose early then?
I think there is pressure to choose early, but I think it's more important they have the information. But also that, especially girls, there's been studies that show that girls really want to have an impact on the world, but there seems to be a disconnect between girls knowing they can have such an immense impact on the world through a degree in science and engineering, and knowing that the way to do that is through physics or through chemistry, biology, maths and engineering as well. So I think that's really something that we need to make sure is out there and is known.
Okay. As a woman in science, have you ever felt that that it was a job that needed to be done, and you took it upon you because it was your lot, as it were? Have you felt like I guess the word is it's a burden or a pressure to do this type of thing, or are you just enjoying it the whole way?
I am really enjoying it.
Okay.
So I'm doing it more and more today as well. But I think it wasn't a burden, or something I kind of felt I had to do, because growing up I didn't really see anyone that looked like me working in space or working in physics or engineering, and that's really reflected in the numbers that do that today as well. So I think we need to make sure that we have 100% of the talent out there working on the hardest problems, but also I think looking to the future, we need to make sure that the solutions that we create in the world through engineering and through physics, so whether that's in AI or whether it's in the training sets to develop facial recognition algorithms, to make sure that we have diverse and talented individuals working on those problems, to make sure that the solutions that we create encompass the entire population and not just a select few as well.
It's an interesting point about having 100% of the talent. There was a book out recently called Invisible Women, I think, by Caroline Perez, I think. And her point is very much that in all areas of life, things have been designed for men.
Right.
And I can imagine that space being so dangerous that you want to make sure that the things that are designed for going into space isn't just modeled on men. Is this something that you come across a lot?
Yeah, so I'm reading that book as well, and it's very good.
Right.
Yeah. So there is recently you might have heard about, there was an issue with the spacesuits on board the space station. So I worked on spacesuit design as well, and so spacesuits, we used medium and large spacesuits. And so at that moment, we had a medium ready to go and a large ready to go. Because what happened was there was 2 female astronauts who were meant to carry out the first all-female spacewalk. So in space, there's been about 500 people that have been to space, and only 11% of those have been female to date. But that is changing, and NASA just the last NASA astronaut class was actually 50% female, which is fantastic. Well, 2013 was 50% female, and the last was 5 out of 12 were female. So at NASA, there's about 30% of the astronaut corps are now female, so it's definitely increasing. But with the spacesuits, one of the female astronauts, Anne McClain, realised that when she went to the space station, she actually needed to use the medium and not the large, but we didn't have another medium ready, and so she got switched out for another astronaut. And there was a big issue about the spacesuit set, but going forward the next few weeks they are scheduled to do a spacewalk with 2 female astronauts, which is fantastic, and they have made sure there are 2 medium spacesuits ready to go. But that is something that we have learnt from. And so the spacesuits were designed in the 1970s, and so we're actually using the same spacesuits that we used in the space shuttle today. So there are 18 that were developed, and they cost millions of dollars, and there's 11 of them that we've refurbished and slightly redesigned, and they're right now on the space, or some are on the space station. But we've learned from that, and I think the most exciting thing for everyone here today is there are these amazing missions that we're working on in the future as well. So friends of mine are working on the new spacesuit, which is the Exploration EMU, which is Extravehicular Mobility Unit. So we're designing a new spacesuit for the future lunar mission. So some of the team that I worked on with the European Space Agency, we're working on future projects. And so we're actually looking at sending the next man and the first woman to the surface of the moon by 2024. So developing a new spacesuit for that. But we're incorporating all the lessons learned that we've learned through the Space Shuttle program and the Space Station program and Mir to make sure that those spacesuits are modular, so able to fit a variety of astronauts, and we're looking at multiple anthropomorphic standards as well. So we're looking at how they fit different types of bodies to make sure they fit both male and female astronauts really well. And that's obviously really important, as you mentioned, because space is a really hard environment to work in, and spacesuits themselves they're really miniature spacecraft. So really, a spacesuit provides the same protection to you as a planet does, as Earth does. It provides thermal control, it provides the atmosphere, it provides air for you to breathe. And so we have to provide all of that expertise in something that you have to wear. And so we're really using those lessons learned to make sure the next spacesuits will be designed for everybody as well.
I mean, I don't know whether this is a legitimate question, but obviously there is, as you say, there's been improvement in the number of female astronauts and so on, and presumably at one point it sort of shifted. Right. We had all men, and then we started the women started getting involved. Do you think that some of the physical things that had to be changed to account for women in space was part of the reason why it was maybe a slower change that we would have imagined? Or do you think that it's all strictly to do with a cultural, like a psychological barrier, in that, we don't think of astronauts as being women?
I think part of it was cultural as well. Also, I think the labour standards changed in the US, which made sure that NASA had to open up the astronaut selection process to women. And so it took almost, I think, it's over 20 years before the first American female astronaut, Sally Ride, launched the space station. And she said something that's really inspirational to me. She said, you can't be it if you can't see it. And that's one of the reasons why I started Rocket Women as well. She realised that one of the most important things that she was doing is making sure that she was a role model for the next generation, and that we needed those role models tangible and visible to inspire them. And so she started Sally Ride Science. It's really good. It's going to this day as well. Okay.
One of the things we heard about in Marika's talk before was this thing about how the working on D&I or inclusion and so on often falls on the young women in the field. Do you think we can expect of all women in the field that they should take this upon themselves? Or do you think it's fine to have a few trailblazers? Or do you think we have a sort of a general collective responsibility for changing this?
I think we have to have a general collective responsibility, both men and women as well. So I think everyone needs to work together. It can't just be something that's worked on by the women. So I think we need men both in academia and in the workplace as well, to recognise this and also become allies. So it's even men supporting you if there are microaggressions at work, for example, to making sure those are pointed out and to not be a bystander, as we heard earlier. I think that's really important, to make sure that we have everybody working together to help prevent this.
Do you think there is something that to you maybe feels very clear or almost even obvious that we're not really doing as a field, but we should be doing much more of?
I think if you're looking at physics, for example, and engineering, we're not seeing the numbers go up. So I think it's really talking to young women, but also minorities younger, and making sure that they're aware of the possibilities of a degree. So I think it's really changing that and getting to school-age children as well, and making sure that we have that pipeline of talent going into the degree programs and then coming out and working in the workplace. So I think that's something that we need to change, and that is being worked on. It will take time, but it's something we need to emphasize and make sure is done.
So when Lucy was introducing you, she said this very cool thing that you were featured in Elle magazine. How important do you think press like that is? Because I mean, surely you can't buy that.
It's nice, and I'm really humbled to be featured. I think it's important to make people aware of the issue and make sure that they know that those role models are there. And I think a lot of young women reading Elle magazine, it's great for them to see people working in engineering, but also space, and knowing that those career possibilities exist, and also the work that they can do and the impact that they can have with those careers. So it's good that they're featured in publications such as that.
Yeah, I think it would just really be lovely if we started, even like, I'm not a big fan of necessarily of ladies magazines, or I've been calling them that, but I think if they're going to be there, they might as well show different types of women.
I agree.
So I think that was very, very cool achievement.
Thank you.
You spoke a bit about female role models having spurred you on early on. Do you would you say you're also able to look at I guess role models that don't look like yourself, and take them as role models? Are you able to get that similar feeling from maybe white men, as there is a lot of them in physics or whatever? Do you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's most of the people that have encouraged me, supported me, have been people that didn't look like me growing up. So yeah, that was essential from my teachers to friends and family around me. But it is important to have people that you do come in contact with, whether it's through people who talk to you at school or in the media or on TV, that do look like you, and that representation is made in the media as well, and that represents the actual workplaces that we have today as well.
Cool. Are we meant to, where are you, Lucy? Are we meant to take any type of questions from the audience, or are we waiting?
We need to make sure we use the microphone though. Just turn it on.
Yeah?
I've got a question.
I've asked so many. Come on, guys. Someone. Yep.
Hi. When starting your Rocket Women project, what do you think was the main difficulty or issue or obstacle that you had to overcome when starting it or introducing the idea even?
So I started it, it's a really interesting story. I started it when I was working at the German Aerospace Centre, and I mentioned it to a colleague of mine, a male colleague, and I've actually had a lot of pushback because colleagues that I worked with and actually said that they didn't recommend that I did that because it wasn't open to men as well, and so they felt that it wasn't equal for men to not have the same opportunities. So I thought that was really interesting. So that kind of spurred me on even to do it and to make sure that I started the website to encourage young women, because that mentality was out there and it was around me as well. So I think, it was really important for me to make sure those role models are on there and the interviews are there. So we tried to feature people from around the world, so they're really diverse. So from India, from Singapore, US and Canada, and make sure the minorities are especially featured as well. But yeah, there has definitely been challenges along the way, but I think I've just been really passionate about it. And it's something that I've done on weekends and in evenings. And also I think now I have a small baby as well, so I think that's really encouraged me even further, even to make sure that the next generation know the impact that they can have, and make sure those role models are out there to inspire them going forward.
What do you think you're the most proud of with Rocket Women?
It was because I think just to where it's got, it's something when you're working on something, you don't really step back to kind of take it all in. And I am proud of it, and it's something that I've worked really hard on evenings and weekends. And I think I'm just most proud of the impact that it's made, and that's resonated with so many young women. I think, that's been amazing to see, and I'm really thankful, because it started off as a blog that I just did after work, and so it's just kind of grown into something that I love, and it's been a passion project of mine, but also has made such an impact as well. And I think I'm really, really happy to see that.
That's one question.
Yeah.
And you spoke about, after this discussion, about feedback from men to rocket women.
Yes.
Have you had something similar from women? Because I know that some of the work that you've done here at King's, we've found that some of our female academics want to sort of distance themselves from women in science initiatives for absolutely completely good reasons, and we're all appreciative of it. Have you found that you've had feedback from women?
I think in the last few years things have changed as well, and there's more and more diversity and inclusion groups that are forming, and it's more accepted. As we heard earlier, it wasn't really even talked about 10 years ago, and now it's something that it's something that's recommended or essential to do when you're starting a new job or a new organisation is formed. But I think that I haven't really heard it recently, no. So that's been good. It's good to hear.
How does the atmosphere in terms of equality and diversity compare between the German Aerospace Centre and the European Space Agency, for example?
I think they're very similar in the numbers. I think it's I was talking to somebody who's also from a BME background as well, and there are very few minority women and men working at both at the moment, which is a shame, but it's something that they are aware of and they're working on. And there is a diversity group that are working on that specifically that have just been incorporated around 3 or 4 years ago. But they do, so it's interesting at the European Space Agency, they do have quotas. So there are female quotas for the young graduate trainee program, which is, they don't have for the actual staff program. So it's something they're looking at maybe doing, but there are pros and cons obviously to quotas. So they need to look at another way maybe to try and encourage more female engineers and scientists to join the European Space Agency. But I work there as a contractor, so it's separate from the staff members. But if you are looking at working at the European Space Agency, the Young Graduate Trainee Programme is a great way to do that. So I think one of the things I didn't talk about is when I was at King's, there's a Maxwell Society for physics. Is it still there? Yeah, so it's still there. So I affiliated that with the UK SEDS, and so it's when I was studying physics, I really wanted to do space, but I didn't really know what that encompassed or what careers were out there. And so I found the UK SEDS, and they're the UK Students for the Exploration and Development of Space. And so I went to the UK SEDS conference and met somebody who worked at the International Space University, who I'll talk about. But the UK SEDS, I actually affiliated them with the Maxwell Society, so we got to go to the UK SEDS conference, we got to meet science-based scientists, and we also we went to the European Space Agency Technology Centre, where I've worked for the last few years. So it was great, even talked about in my interview, it was nice to know the centre already and know a bit about the work that was done there. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't gone there with the Maxwell Society. So I was really thankful to that. So I think it's really learning at this stage, like your stage you're in now, kind of learning about different experiences and workplaces, and to know what's out there as well. Yeah. But the International Space University as well is something that I would recommend. So it's a university that's based in Strasbourg in France. And so while I was at the UK SEDS conference, there was somebody there that was from there, and so I applied and I got in. So after I graduated from King's, I did the Space Studies program, which is a 9-week program at the International Space University, and there are also scholarships available for it as well. So as obviously you've already got, you have pay tuition fees for your undergraduate degree, but it's great to know that for postgraduate at ISU there are scholarships. And also through Rocket Women, we've just started a new scholarship. So I knew through going to ISU that a lot of people were struggling to kind of get the funds to go to ISU. And so we started a scholarship through Rocket Women, and so we have an apparel range, and all the proceeds from that go towards a scholarship for female students to study at the International Space University. So you could definitely apply for that if you want to go. But the ISU, it's a 9-week program where you learn about an overview of the space industry. So you learn from astronauts, people working in the space industry, about space business and space engineering and biology. And you get to go to, sometimes it's at NASA and sometimes it's the European Space Agency. So it moves around the world every single year. And it's a great way to kind of learn about space and learn about what you can do in the space industry, but also a very good way to make connections as well.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, are we on time? Oh.
Another question?
Yeah.
I'd like to say, it seems like you're the type of person who can live their inner vision outwardly, and it seems like you have been like that from the get-go. I wonder how you got to become this kind of person who gets to live their life like that rather than listen to what people say or choose to live a life where you kind of do what people tell you to do.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I think just being confident, but I think that confidence come from accomplishment. So I think I wasn't confident when I was younger. Like I've done public speaking. I think when I was maybe 17 or 18, but it's really just come from learning and knowing that that voice needs to be heard, and I really wanted my voice to be heard to inspire the next generation. I felt really passionately about that. But I think it's really knowing what I wanted to do and just having the strong vision about that. And so my parents and people around me wanted me to study dentistry. So originally in my UCAS film, I actually applied for dentistry, and then it changed. So it was something that I had to push and persuade people around me, just have that inner belief and know that I wanted to study physics and I wanted to study maths and physics and astrophysics specifically, and get there in the end. And it was a struggle, but I'm glad that I persevered. And it does sound cliched, but you really just have to believe in yourself and make sure you have allies around you. So make sure you have teachers, and you, if you can, and have people that you can talk to, or contact people that like I definitely am happy to email with students and provide advice. Or there are lots of people that I work with at Rocket Women. So if there are anyone that you want to get in touch with, please let me know. I can definitely put you in touch with them or talk to them, and use LinkedIn or just email people, and they're happy to help. So I think it's really having these people to support you and encourage you to kind of get to that point.
Just because about the female as role models, I completely agree and understand how important it is for changing the public opinion. That there are female scientists that have been equally successful as me, and also because, as you mentioned, like even parents, kids seeing these role models and maybe be convinced to encourage them to study physics and all this, encourage them for such a career path. I'm not really convinced whether female role models can only inspire young girls to study physics, because from personal experience, I was actually inspired from 2 male physicists. In fact, my female teacher in physics tried to discourage me from doing that. So, yeah, I think that's it. Are there any statistics actually around it, any studies?
I think so. The WISE campaign they do really good studies on it as well. But you can they've released one, I think last year as well, about the number of women in physics and engineering and how that's impacted by role models. So I think they're doing some really good work and to looking in that area. I think mainly in the UK, and Athena Swan as well have done some good studies on role models and the impact of role models on encouraging young women. But I think it does make a big difference when you're growing up to see somebody that looks like you in your career, or something that you wouldn't really think about if you hadn't seen that person when you were 11 or 12 and making those critical decisions in your education and your career.
I mean, possibly the difference is also between the role models you see but don't speak to, if that makes any sense. Because you said like you had a physics teacher who discouraged you, but you probably have benefited from knowing that a woman can be a physicist. Does that make sense? Like there's a difference necessarily between like, oh, knowing that females exist or women can be professors of physics, and then necessarily that's not necessarily the same as speaking to them. Like they can be role models without speaking directly to you.
No, in both cases, no. No, in both cases I can support them directly, so it's not exactly.
No. I know what you mean, but I think like you can look at the benefits of female role models, and that can be separate to what a female physics teacher, or like a specific person. Does that make sense? I'm not being very clear. That's different. Sorry.
Do you think you'll ever actually go to space? Is that something that you want to do?
Hopefully. So I think to become an astronaut, it's pretty tough. So, but I think I would apply if there was an opportunity. I think a really great example is Zena Coldman, and she's 29, and at 29 she wasn't sure if she had the experience to become an astronaut, because you need to do a degree, but also you need, I think, 5 years of experience, 5 or 6 years of experience minimum. But she applied and she became an astronaut out of 18,000 applicants for the NASA astronaut program. So it's it's probably 1 in 18,000. So 5 in 18,000. So for the Canadian national astronauts, there's only 2 selected. So, but I heard that the UK might select a new astronaut next year, maybe, so we'll see, hopefully. But I definitely go to space for the commercial programs as well. So Virgin Galactic have they're going to launch their commercial spaceflight program quite soon. And also this Blue Origin are looking at starting their commercial spaceflight program for humans. So I think there's a lot of commercial companies out there that are growing in the space industry, and they're a great opportunity to go to space, but also to work with. So there's quite a few in the UK as well that you can look at if you want to look at experience, for example.
I just wanted to come back on the role models thing. I think I understand what you're saying, but I think you made a really, really good point, and I think it's often neglected about being of colour. Is that I had the same thing of like I had to fight to do a degree in chemistry because my parents wanted me to get a job, especially when you're the child of immigrants or they're the child of immigrants, so like be a doctor or a nurse or something because it's a guaranteed job. Doing a degree in a subject where you want to study is such a risk when you come from like a low socioeconomic background.
Right.
Because like saying, oh, I want to research, I want to go to space, my parents are like, great, so a doctor.
Exactly.
So, like,
Exactly.
So I think like having people who are role models of colour is so important to be like, this is a space for us. Because my parents were very concerned that wasn't something that people like us did. So I wanted to ask a question as well for you, as how was it, aside from being a woman, how specifically was it being a woman of colour? Because the one thing that I found through university is that even in women in STEM spaces, I still feel out of place because like the problems that you face as a woman of colour aren't necessarily the same as the problems you face as a white woman, and often women in STEM initiatives are focused around the white experience.
Right. Yeah.
So how did you navigate that kind of being necessarily like, oh, you can be one of 5 women, but the 4 other women were white?
Right. No, that's a really good point. Thank you. So when I started Rocket Women, that was one of the things I wanted to look at, was making sure those role models were diverse, because I think there are a lot of initiatives out there, but I hadn't really seen anybody from diverse backgrounds that are represented in them. So because of that brilliant point that you made, that you really need people that look like you, and I think you need diverse role models out there. But I was lucky at King's, and just that so for maths and physics and astrophysics, the course that I did, there were 3 women on there, and the rest were guys, but the guys actually all dropped out or did other courses by the end. So the 3 of us stuck, and there was 2 Asian women on this, myself, and another woman as well. So I think we really stuck together, and we were lucky in the fact that we had each other. We had that support going through that course. I think it was really tough for all of us. I think we all talked about in those 3 years about whether we wanted to do something else, just because it's just how tough we found it. But I think it's really just finding allies and finding people that support you, that have shared experiences, as you mentioned. They are different, that can help you along the way. And I think it's just finding those people. So maybe it's joining groups. So through Rocket Women, we're starting chapters, so women can come together and talk about their experiences and really support each other. That's something that's really important, that you have those safe spaces that you can talk about those experiences, and making sure that you're supported and encouraged along that journey.